Yeah. So I put this picture up because anytime I talk to my friends, this is the analogy they say. You go to a circus and you see a bear. You're like, that's kind of cool. Okay, I've seen a bear before. The bear gets on a unicycle and starts moving around. You're like, okay, that's a little bit more interesting. But then the bear gets on a unicycle and starts juggling some balls. Like that's pretty cool. That you're going to write about. So
at a high level, the bear.
Banyan is the bear.
Okay.
You're the tree.
And so I think what makes our product really cool, what makes it really interesting, and I want to dive into real details about it, is that we are kind of merging these three very different worlds. And I'm going to dive into every single one of them, the kind of the benefits they give you and why it's interesting. Jayant talked about why we quantify trust with our trust scoring. He talked about distributed enforcement with our access mesh. And finally, our policy engine. That is our cloud command center that allows us to do zero trust authorization. So I'm going to go into each one of those in as much detail as we want. So let's start with...
Actually, can we start with the trust score? That seems a lot more interesting than Mesh at the moment.
I will get to it second. I just, for my demo, I need to kick something off here before I get to the trust score. So I'll get to it second. So not third, but second. So what is our access mesh? We talk about distributed enforcement. We talk about resources that can exist anywhere in the cloud. What is it? What do we mean? Well, when you have a user and you have clusters with applications running in the cloud, our access mesh is essentially a lightweight identity-aware reverse proxy that you deploy in your clusters. And it's just pure software. Single button click in every marketplace. And it's completely aware of the identity of the principal, the authentication principal, and so you can manage policies. We use standard techniques like mutual auth TLS and OpenID Connect JOT to mediate all access. So for more traditional environments where you have on-prem clusters, the exact same technique extends. And this is why we call it access mesh, because it doesn't matter whether you're running in the cloud, you're running on-premise, you're using SaaS applications. The architecture is simple and scalable across all your environments. What is really interesting about these mesh technologies, and Jayant mentioned, it's become more and more popular in the cloud-native Kubernetes world, is that we no longer rely on static constructs like IP addresses or a long-lived server certificate. So traditionally, that's always been the focus. If I have this IP address, I am trusted. If I come from this office, I am trusted. In our world, everything is, I use the word short-lived because I always mispronounce ephemeral. Whatever. How would you pronounce it? Ephemeral?
Ephemeral.
Ephemeral, okay. Anyway, the idea is we use short-lived credentials that are easy to pronounce. But because it's fully automated, all the certificates, all our credentials, they are meant to be created, used, and destroyed. The security properties and the security benefits are really high. So then specifically, what is it? So we have a software-defined setup. So I'm going to do this right now. I'm just going to show you how software-defined it. I'm just going to mix the demo with the product itself. So this is my S3 console. So how software-defined is it? Well, we're in the marketplace. So you can just go click Start here. We also provide you some simple CloudFormation templates so you can get going. So I'm just going to start one of those CloudFormation templates.
Do I have to pick your product out of the marketplace, or can I load it onto my own EC2 instances or something of that nature?
Absolutely,
okay.
Yeah. So we have many options. This is very specifically if you're in AWS and you want to do things this way. But if you have on-premise, you want to just run the binary, you can do that. You can install it on your EC2 instances directly.
Okay.
You can configure it as you wish.
Okay.
That's the real benefit of being software, right? It's not like a big fat gateway appliance that gets pushed that way.
You're in the Azure marketplace too?
Yes.
Okay.
Azure, GCP, all the big mega clouds. So let's call it Tech Field Day Testing. It's live because it's going to break. But that shouldn't stop us, right? So let me just assign some few things here. I'm going to launch it, and then I will come back to it. This is why I had to start. I have to just add my kind of authentication token here. Okay, and I'll come back to it in 5 minutes. It takes AWS a few seconds to, deploy these resources, but I'll come back to it towards the end of the demo. Great stack. Okay, so now it's going on.
UIOC.
I'll come back to it to show you how it actually all works.
And you have different sizing guidelines based on the environment?
Exactly. Actually, the cool thing about being in the cloud is it auto scales. So you can start with a very small instance, and as you get more load, it'll just scale up. And because it's pure software, all it has to do is create another replica. And then when you're done, it'll just scale back down.
How are you licensed?
I
If you're auto scaling, what am I paying for?
We focus on users and apps for the licensing. Oh, yeah, we focus on users and apps for licensing.
Yeah. So we're again trying to be like a software platform. So we don't license per gateway or CPU or just like how are you using us and pay us based on that.
Okay.
Okay, with the auto scaling piece, since you're in AWS and I'm using your product out of the marketplace, do you guys automatically build that with AWS auto scaling? Do you pull the auto scaling groups and build those,
Exactly.
or do I have to generate all that?
No, that's why I showed you it's a CloudFormation template.
Okay.
It includes the NLB auto scaling
Gotcha.
group.
Okay.
Everything
Excellent.
for you. But you can also unwrap it all and do it all yourself if you wish.
Okay.
But we just kind of package it up nicely.
Package all nice and easy. Okay, cool.
So when you have your reverse proxy, do you have any limits on what you can reverse proxy? Because there are badly formed websites that don't respond well with reverse proxies. So how do you handle that?
So my previous company, we built it like an Akamai, but for mobile. So the whole idea was, the world is going mobile. Let's build a CDN for mobile. And so I spent a lot of time reverse proxying things. And trust me, I know. We power Macy's, probably the worst website in the universe. If you guys try shopping there, but it makes a lot of money. We've taken care of it. This is a top-notch team from VMware building these things. So we have handled every corner case. This proxy is anything you want. So just in terms of the software-defined part, I'll come back to it as I go into the demo. Jayant mentioned all our enforcement is done with mutual auth TLS and JOT tokens, which allows us to be completely network agnostic. We don't require to rewire your software-defined networking, your security groups, your software, anything else, nothing. You don't have to change your VPN setup. We work agnostic to the network and still give you the granular access you want. And finally, it's not just an authentication point, it's an authorization point. So we're constantly monitoring your activity. So it's continuous authorization. Actually, I did this a little bit before. So what is cool about this kind of distributed enforcement architecture is fundamentally that your users get direct access. They get direct access to their AWS resource, their Azure resource, Salesforce, Dropbox, whatever they want. They don't need to come through a VPN that you're hosting in your office. And because of the way it's deployed and managed, it's also concealed from the crazy people on the internet. It's only your authorized users that can get in. This is very different from kind of the deployments we've seen, like the bulky web access gateways or the VPNs. So this is very different from that. There is a class of companies, like my previous company, that ran a CDN that say, hey, push all your data through my CDN before it comes to your actual application. We don't do that. Direct access, you own your own data plane. And the best part is because we use standard techniques, we don't need you to install some heavyweight OpenVPN client on your laptop. Web access, just use the browser. Open up the browser. It's like typing dropbox.com. You just get in. So it's very seamless user experience. And I'll show that when I get to the demo. So that was the access mesh piece. And I think, Edward, I went quickly for you so that I could get to the next piece, the trust scoring piece. But any questions or comments there? OK, so that's how we enforce our security policies. Let's talk about how we assign trust. Because in a zero trust world, enforcement is very important. But how do we actually distribute the trust? How do we actually assign the trust to the entities that need it? So that's what we call our trust scoring engine. And so traditionally, trust has been associated with authentication. It's like, hey, based on what you know, this could be your username and password. Could be based on what you have, probably MFA, your phone, and maybe it could even be something you are. It could be your location or maybe a biometric, fingerprint, something like that. This is how it's always been done. You evaluate these three, and then you say, all good or not good, a very binary decision. And we think in the zero trust world that just no longer flies. It's one of our core hypotheses that it is no longer a static yes-no decision. It's more like your credit score. Hey, credit scores are a great analogy because they look at your payment history. They look at things you don't even know about. Every time I run a credit report, I'm like, who is this? And so they take so many signals and they compute a dynamic number that changes. And whether you can buy a Porsche or buy a Corolla, you can still buy a car, but the credit score defines what you can do. And so to your point, our trust score is going to figure out whether you get to access the Chinese mail server or your own office server, this application. You can use the credit score, our trust scoring, to do all that. So how is this trust score actually computed? I'm just going to dive one level deeper. So we kind of use the context of the user and the context of the device to compute our trust score. Now, we collect some signals ourselves, of course, but I think the reality of the modern enterprise is they have hundreds of security tools. You have to integrate with all their security tools. So we integrate with tools like Okta that keeps track of how you have logged in. Have you used MFA? When did you log in? What geography did you log in from? We also integrate with MDMs like AirWatch, as you mentioned. This is telling you what kind of laptop is it? Is it patched? Is it running all the applications I said that should run? So we can imbibe those signals. We also integrate with the behavioral analytics tooling. Splunk has come up with some fantastic entity behavior analysis that is looking at, am I doing malicious activity patterns? You can write your own pre-built models that go and run on Splunk. And of course, we have our favorite antivirus products. They are always scanning your laptops and trying to figure out, is there malicious malware and stuff running on this? So we integrate with all of these. We also have our own signals, but we use all of this to compute a trust score. Does that answer your question a little bit better on how we think about the problem?
No.
So
How do you I know it's an algorithm to come up with the trust score, but when you start thinking about Okta and Splunk and all these others, there's 1,000,001 of these. What actually, do you have a full list somewhere of what you integrate with? Because there's 1,000,001 of these things, and I want to know, hey, are the ones we using actually in there? Because we don't use Okta.
And on top of that, how, the use of it without them, if you don't have some of these set up, is it going to be detrimental to you for this deployment?
Using Splunk, the data is only just what you're sending into it.
Exactly.
Splunk's expensive to send all your data into.
Most people don't send everything.
It is expensive to get into you, but
Exactly.
it gets even more, and then it becomes this whole thing of, are we sending the correct, and are we getting the data correctly out of it?
So you guys mentioned maybe 3 different things that I try to summarize. First is there are hundreds of factors, and you may not have all of them. Some organizations may have 1 and 2. The second is some of them could just be junk. How do you extract real signals from those factors? And the third thing is, what algorithm do you use to solve this? And I would say that's been one of the hardest problems we have solved at Banyan, is making this platform. And then when Jacob talks about our customers, you'll see kind of real-world scenarios we've been able to apply this. It is not an easy problem. If it was an easy problem, I guess other people would do it. But it's a hard problem to ingest. First, figure out all the different types of factors you can get, figure out what's applicable, what's not, ingest it the right way, extract the signals the right way, and then actually give a score that is meaningful. So it's a great point. I'll just give you
Can you go back to that? That actually seems more interesting to me. What do you mean by average dwell time?
So how about this? I cannot go into so much detail, but maybe at the end, we'll have a more detailed average. Actually, maybe, Jayant, you can talk about dwell time, but I don't want to get too deep into this one.
Yeah, I think we can take this whole thing offline where we can go into detail because it's getting patented and all that stuff. But just at a high level, yeah, we need to look at factors not just based on what's coming in and how much what their absolute values are, but much more about how much weight we assign to each of these factors, and that needs to be dynamically changed, and we need to use machine learning and all that to make that happen. So we'll take this whole thing offline, and we'll have a little deeper discussion with you on that, if you don't mind.
And just to answer your question, average dwell time is how long am I spending, my session length, essentially.
Okay.
And we can detect that your session length has changed. If your session length is too long compared to what you've done historically, that's a potential thing to look at. So I'm just going to pause right here and show you an example. So this is an example of a device trust score. So we were talking about session length, which is more how users use it. We do something very similar for devices. We look at the posture of your device. In this case, we integrate with Carbon Black and AirWatch to figure it out. So again, in the interest of a demo, we have an app that you can install on your laptop to show you this trust score. It's not required, but many enterprises like this app. So this is the trust score of my device. I tried to get it 100, but I hate auto updates. I don't know, I don't know. You guys probably enforce your companies to have auto updates, but I click it. I click it often. Don't get upset. But I just don't have it auto doing it. I don't want Edward to judge me. Oh, look, my access tier is deployed. I will use it for the rest of the demo in the background. But for my device trust score, this is a fairly deterministic computation we've done. And in the next part of the demo, I'll show you how we break the determinism. But and an enterprise can select what factors are important to them. We can integrate with your existing tooling. We integrate with your antivirus solutions. But this is a very clear, consistent, understandable trust score. And our goal is to do this for every entity, not just devices, for users, for workloads, for everybody else.
So when you're doing trust scores between devices and users, are you taking, and you're evaluating, are you taking the lowest trust score, or are you averaging? What are you playing with?
Jen, maybe.
Yeah, so sure. So I think so we went through a lot of exercise about exactly that. Does it make sense to kind of combine a user trust score with a device trust score, because you are using one type of device today and you're going to use a different type of device tomorrow? Shouldn't the fact that you screwed up on one device affect you when you actually start using a different device? So there is some correlation, but it's not like that's the reason why we don't do any of those averages or take a minimum of that. So we kind of keep these two scores separate. So we kind of treat this as two different scores in the system that we need to use both when it comes down to applying and allowing or disallowing access.
So that's the ongoing thing. You're not necessarily having one affect the other. But for immediate access, if I'm a score 100 as a user, but my device is a score 20, at that immediate moment, you might say, yeah, you're not accessing on
exactly.
this thing.
So
pick something else.
Right. So I think there's a whole concept of, there's one. I think you should.
I'm going to get to that in the policy section.
Okay.
So when we talk about how we take the trust score and we create policies like that, I will get to some of those concepts.
Great. Thank you.
Right. And we can go over the details.
Can I add to the list of elements that I'm going to compute my trust score on?
Will you let us patent the ideas you come up with?
Yeah.
But yes, the answer is yes.
Yeah, real quick, John, you want to turn on? The idea here, as we build this out and as we go to market, every organization is going to have a different policy, right? So it's going to be an extensible platform that can integrate with your various tools that may not be the most popular tools, but we'll have open APIs for that. But also, we'll be able to input your policies into the system as well, because yours may be more complex or they may be more simple based on.
I'm thinking more like device. Are third-party drivers installed? Are they unsigned or signed applications installed? Are the secure boot enabled?
Yeah, we can add more factors.
Is the TPM actually in use?
Yeah.
Is the TXT in use? All these things would become very, very useful for a device score, because that will give me other layers of trust.
Absolutely.
Exactly. And sorry, go ahead.
Kind of related, but kind of not exactly. My question is regarding, is there a consideration of a device that would be potentially more at risk or have more value, like in regards to like GDPR and personal data is obviously highly sensitive, highly confidential. So even though it might technically be a risk score of, or what is that? Yeah, trust score of like 80 or something. Can I add in a tag to say, but these aren't high enough standard or something like? That's a really poor example, but
no, I think I get it. So when I get to our policy language, I'll talk about it a little bit.
Okay.
So our policies are written both in terms of roles and the trust of the device.
Oh, nice.
So a device has a trust, which is high, medium, low, these numbers, but it also has a role, which is a sensitive device carrying GDPR data or engineering laptop that wants to submit code. So we have both of those concepts, and our policies merge them together.
Oh, lovely.
But that's a nice segue to my next thing. But before I go there, just
did that on purpose.
Just before I go there, I think maybe it was Blake. You had a question on workload. It was. So we spoke about users and devices having trust scores, but as Jayant mentioned, any zero trust platform has to be pervasive. And the reality in today's world, it's not just users and devices trying to access your applications. A lot of traffic is other applications that need to access your applications. This is traditionally been handled with hardcore segmentation. micro-segmentation, nano-segmentation, pico-segmentation. Well, if you go back to first principles, it's the same damn thing. It's just, if you treat a workload, a process, a container as an entity, you can assign it a trust. Hey, was it deployed in my cluster? Was it deployed by someone I know? Was it deployed in AWS, an environment I control? You can, and because we use cryptography, the Edgewise guys don't like this. We can give you certificates based on your SHAs. We can give you certificates based on your PID. We can allocate trust onto however granular you want to get. So the Banyan Zero Trust platform extends seamlessly for east-west microsegmentation as well. It's not necessarily the primary integration point for many of our customers, but the technology works, the platform works, and we think any Zero Trust platform has to bridge that divide.
How do you determine trust on IoT devices?
So there are a few different ways that we have. When Jacob talks about it, we have a customer who does a lot of IoT. There are a few ways. One is, on IoT devices, you have to put some hardware certificate in a hidden TPM. There has to be a root of trust. You can't just push out software to those. You never know where to deploy it. So we have to integrate with the vendors who do that kind of stuff. So that, I would say, is probably the best way to do it. If you have other ideas, but typically it has to be some hardware-based thing.
Or the problem, though, with IoT is a lot of times they don't think about security.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the joke I say is the S in IoT stands for security.
And the I stands for idiot.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Okay, so perfect. So this is a good segue to what Zoe was asking about, the policies and the command center. So anytime we think like zero trust authorization, continuous authorization, this is what people think about. Any of you familiar with XACML or OAuth 2? These are horrendous standards. This is not how we can do authorization for security anymore. These are just too complicated. In Banyan, authorization is done in very simple, easy to understand terms. So it's basically what roles need access and what trust level do they need to be to get that access. So the roles could be, I'm an engineering team, I'm a managed device, I have a GDPR compliant device, and so on. And the trust level is the stuff we talked about, high, medium, low, is what trust has been assigned to me based on the different signals that we have gathered. So I'm also going to kick off a policy in our console just to show you. Oh, I just got logged out for security reasons. 1 second. So this is the Banyan console. I'm just going to quickly go create a new policy in our system. So when we create a policy, let me call it, I'm going to create an SFT test policy. Hi there. And you literally come here and you just say, hey, I need engineering laptops. And you add that. Or I need a GDPR device. And you add that. And that's about it. You have to have these. Then you create the policy. And so it's a super easy, very simple to do real-time system for your policies.
Could you zoom in just a bit? I'm quite blind.
No, what's that?
Just a bit.
Zoom in.
Yeah.
Zoom in. Yeah, when I get to the demo, I will zoom into every one of those. I just wanted to give a little bit more visual feel of what it was like to write those policies. So then the way organizations use us is they can have very coarse-grained rules. Right? It can be very high-level rules that affect everybody. Something like, if you want to submit source code, you have to come from a trusted, high-trusted device. So these are kind of organization-wide. You can do service level, which is down to a specific application, often down to a specific user, which could say something like, if your finance application can only be accessed by finance employees using certain devices. You can get down to that granularity. We could get even deeper, right? If you're in China, you can only access the Chinese web server, and so on. We could get more and more fine-grained on that. And the cool thing about where we attack the problem is we can do resource-level policies. And a lot of our security-conscious organizations use this often for admin access. Because you always have these admin APIs. Like if anybody has deployed WordPress, that WP admin section that allows you to go crazy. Well, you can lock the, right? Download this fancy theme with Mageware or something silly like that. So you can lock those down. Only you come from a high trust device, only certain admins can access those admin sections.
I'll get it later.
And then we provide in the dashboard, because it's a centralized control point, we have reporting, we have audit, compliance, we're tracking what you're doing, where, how, so it's very easy for compliance activities. Maybe I'll just pause. Any other questions before
you got down to assets, and I'm assuming they could be web servers, they could be anything, including Microsoft Office apps for whatever reason. But how can you get down to the data? There's certain pieces of the puzzle that are only solved at the data level, because while I may have access to Office, I open up a document. Well, I should not be able to open that document from anywhere. Or I mark mail as confidential. I have access to Exchange, but I should not be seeing confidential information. So how does your reverse proxy work on the data, or does it?
And on that note, how manual is it? I mean,
Can I set a policy like that?
So I think it's important to see which problem we are tackling. So there are some problems that we're not tackling. We're typically tackling a network access problem, not a DLP problem, which is what you're talking about.
No, it's still access to data. It's
Okay,
not
so then
necessarily
it's
data.
access,
It's data access. It's not an access problem. It's not a DLP problem.
Yeah, so I think like one way to think about it is what is data? Data at the end of the day is sitting somewhere, and how the way you provide access is through what? Is through APIs at the end of the day. Your APIs could be your SQL tables, it could be HTTP APIs, it could be a different protocol, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, every application has a set of APIs that are published in order to access your data. So as long as you can control what APIs are allowed and not allowed to be used by any given entity, you can in turn indirectly control what data you can and cannot access. That's pretty much it. So there is a one-to-one correspondence between application and data at the end of the day.
But there isn't. That's the problem.
How do you, okay, we can have a long discussion about, a philosophical discussion about what are the ways in which people end up accessing data. And at the end of the day, you have to expose them in some form or the other.
No, I agree with you, but the question is I have different types of data, different classifications of data in one application. How do I limit that access to only one classification based on my geolocation, perhaps, or based on the device I'm using?
But is that more of that's more of an application problem as opposed to an access problem? Where I think
So
you're getting more.
I think exactly. I think it comes down to like if I was writing that application, the way I would write it is I would create different types of APIs.
But the problem is that we don't have applications like that today. Mail works the way mail works.
Yes.
Right.
But what I'm hearing from you guys is it's you're starting looking at the application, and then anything below above the application, like individual data access, that's on the application.
Yeah, so
you're looking at it from secure
API.
access,
Exactly.
regardless of where the user is, because especially in a multi-cloud environment, the user could be anywhere trying to access data, but then we want to make sure that they're accessing it correctly. I'm kind of curious as to then the setup of it.
Yeah.
So how much of it is, okay, if we can set up the app, great, I have the application set up, but then as the admin, how do I deal with that? Okay, it's installed, what do I do, and how do I make sure that, they're in China, I don't want to do them. If they're in the UK, I don't want this.
Yeah, so that's the policy.
There's setup there's a deployment aspect to setup, and there's a policy management aspect. Yeah. And I would say that's what my main job is, making it as easy and seamless as possible. And I think we've done pretty well. We have lots of scope for improvement, but I would say most of our customers, 10, 15 minutes, they can be up and running with some basic policies. Then they can start visualizing what's going on, and if they want to tighten stuff and make it better and better.
So I know you were doing the demo. Are you going to be doing more into the policy stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, on it. Okay.
Yeah. And I think one comment there is that a good way to think about some of this stuff is to think of this as like a mandatory access control layer. So that way you could enforce like policies that are going to be global, so to speak, at many different levels. And then you can have individuals much more finer grain within the application if you really want to get to the next level. So that way you kind of have it.
My concern is that a lot of times you get into the operational level of things and
What's that?
They just, enterprises just want to deploy and they're not really thinking about the security aspect of it. Okay, should finance guys have access to administrative stuff? No. Well, they may not even thinking of that.
Exactly. So that's why the whole policy language is going to go over is like default deny. So you kind of start at the place where you have absolutely no access anywhere, and then you kind of start allowing.
Okay.
Awesome. So just to recap what we covered, we started on the right, talking about a distributed enforcement principle. Then we talked about how we quantify trust, and then kind of gave some examples of continuous authorization policies that we enforce. So now I'm going to try to put it all together and show you that, in the right place you can find these bears that can do all of them. So this is my setup. I think it's a fairly standard environment today where, you still have some finance applications and source code running on premise. In this particular environment, I'm using AWS quite a lot, and I just deployed an access tier here. You have servers, and you might be using some managed services, and you have different types of devices that need access. And I only have one laptop, my personal laptop, but it represents a contractor accessing stuff, but we have another one. And then the Banyan access tier is deployed everywhere here. So let's start. So traditionally, if you had a VPN set up and you want to access GitLab, like how many of you guys use a VPN today? Or have used? Okay, so all of you know this. Some admin has to go deploy one big fat VPN gateway here. You have to start up the client. You have to connect to the gateway. You have to do all this. It's pretty complicated. So I'm just going to show you how it is for us. And then I'll get into the details of what actually is happening. So if you use Banyan, it's as easy as accessing Dropbox. You just open a browser and you enter the domain, in this case of GitLab. So I'm just going to hit enter. And if the demo gods, I just tested it, so let me close that. Okay, so I'm just going to go through the step one by one. It was already working, I just shut it down. So we do the device check, and I made it explicit so that everybody knows it's going on. Most enterprises hide this. They just do it quietly behind the scenes. This integrates with all your different device trust scoring pieces, make sure the device is trusted. This is where we integrate with your single sign-on tooling. This could be Okta. In my case, I have a different IDP. It could be Active Directory. I sign in, and that's it. It's as simple as that. And now I can actually authenticate into the application itself. So we have a setup that's deep in a data center that traditionally would have required, gnarly network configuration, segmentation, VPN, and now we just expose it. Our customers call it a cloud-like experience, where applications are available just at the fingertips. So just briefly, how does this happen? How is it secure? How is it secure to do this? It's secure because we put all the three pieces, our little bear juggling on a unicycle, we put it all together. So when you request the application, it goes through our enforcement point. Our enforcement point redirects you to our command center, which does the device checking. It does all the single sign-on integration. And only after trust has been actually verified does it send you some token back that allows you access.
So does it also control the users of the application? Like you just use root. I mean, for example, that would be like an immediate never do that. But I would want something that also not only just my user getting through Banyan, but also, hey, what's the actual ultimate user you logged in as would be. It should only be you.
Yes. We can. In my demo, you're right, I separated them out just to show clearly that this has its own authentication. We have our own authentication, but you can definitely tie them together.
Okay.
Question about, so basically in a situation like detecting I can't say that word, anomalies?
Yeah.
There we go, I got it. Is there anything in there that does is it simply based to yes, no, you can access this, or do you have auditing that notifies, for example, how many times somebody was able to successfully log in because maybe that is so high that that's quite suspicious? Or
that's great. I didn't plant the question, but I was definitely planning on going there. So we have
really good at this. We should work together.
So we have a dashboard here that's tracking and auditing that a lot of compliance teams use heavily, and very customizable dashboard. I think your specific question was, can I keep track of what is being accessed by when, where? So we have two types of things that I just did, and I turned on super verbose logging. You can see everything. Mm-hmm. So the first thing I did here was what is the authentication phase, where we, in this case, federated with our IDP. We log every authentication event. And we also log every access event. So you get to see every single API I called.
Lovely.
Yeah.
And when you said you integrate with Splunk,
Yes.
So I'm a Splunk architect, so I love it. Don't get me wrong, brilliant. But the one thing I get frustrated with is when I am like sending the data there. Sometimes you have to do it through, as you probably know, syslog or something. Do you have like when you integrate? Do you have like very granular? You can send this data, not this.
Yes. We have adapters. We have customers who've used us integrating with Elastic.
Okay.
It's also, if you like Splunk, you might like Elastic too.
No, I do.
Yeah. So yes, 100%. Yeah. We're really built for that world.
Yeah.
We're built for that.
And then, would it be through like adding alerts and that? Would that be through your Banyan, or would it be through something like Splunk, for example?
Both. Either,
Okay.
depending on how you guys want to control.
Nice. Okay. And then I guess my other question, based on because you said in the policies you can add, more high risk devices, or what? Is that? I guess, because I'm thinking of like in a distributed, like global company. I've got London, I've got, I don't know, US somewhere, and obviously I want to centrally manage it. Because most organizations don't have like 60 million ops teams. Well, they actually might, that's bad. Would it be something where I'd have to consider, because of leaving the EU data, would that be considered I'd have two solutions, or would they be centrally managed and I would be able to block certain things?
So we work with a few global companies, and they've been able to use the Banyan dashboard to achieve both compliance and security.
Brilliant.
But I think as you get into more and more federal governments and more regulated industries, you might have to split them up. But it's customizable, where you could do both. You could have your data reside where you need it to. We built it from the ground up for these modern environments, so it's easy to do these things.
Okay. Because I'm just curious about, like, in my current role, we've got pretty much an office in all the major hubs, and the biggest challenge is our headquarters is large, has the tech, has the ops, has the cyber, but the other offices aren't as big, so they would have to be centrally managed. But again, the data can't traverse. So is it, when you say you might want to have addition, would it be something that I'd have to, if I transfer to the New York office, for example, would they have to then recreate my profile or something?
No, absolutely not.
They would still be connected?
Yeah, it'll still be connected. And the key thing for us is you own your data plane. You deploy the data plane, you own the data plane. So that's why we can do a lot of these things. Okay. We can migrate in the cloud, we can be in different clouds, because you own your data plane. There are other solutions that manage the data plane for you. My last company, we manage the data plane for you. We work great for US companies, but as soon as the European companies came on board, they were like, no, you can't deploy in AWS. You come all the way to, back then they didn't have Europe, but you had to go to OVH or something. Yeah.
So what you're saying is, if I had a company, part of my company was in China, which all the users in China have to stay in China, literally, and I have a Chinese citizen going to London, they could be, their identities still would be, that identity actually can't travel. They would need a new identity.
Well, the identity for us is handled by an IDP. We're not an identity provider. So however you chose to do your identity management, Active Directory, Okta, we just federate with those guys. So we would just use them.
Okay.
So we have architected our system so we don't have to worry about. But the
policy associated with that identity actually can't leave China either.
Okay.
So we're talking about, you have global companies where, by law, you can't actually have anything tied to an identity leaving that country for various reasons. So the identity provider will keep it there. But that also means any rules associated with the identity can't leave that country. So in that case, it sounds like I would need two Banyans.
We have to get into the specifics, but Jacob will tell you. We have a customer who does this already.
Right. So our product is typically delivered as a service. Oh, it's not on. Okay. So our product is typically delivered as a service, the cloud command center piece that has all the policies that you would define as well. But for certain customers, if it's a regulated environment where you need something on-premise in your environment, we can work with you guys as well. So we do support both models. Because we work with a lot of customers today. If you look at the identity and access management market, you've got IDaaS, you have traditional access management tools, the SiteMinders, the IBM tools, et cetera, that are out there as well. And they're solving different problems, right? And the traditional ones are more on-premise applications, SAP, Oracle, et cetera. The other ones are more SaaS as well. So what we're trying to do is solve both those and provide the flexibility to deliver a zero-trust solution for both on-premise, hybrid, and cloud requirements.
So this demo was for HTTP access. Yep. Do you have other demos?
Yeah, I'm coming. So before I jump to the other one, the next one is I just want to show you, typically access is once and done. But what if something happens? So what if you detect a risk? So in my case, I don't know, have you guys been following this Bitcoin miner malware on Mac? This awesome little thing. You go to all these websites, it somehow installs itself part of an extension, and then I'm just going to start it on my laptop here. Okay. And so then what it starts, it turns on your webcam randomly. It starts logging your keystrokes. And then behind the scenes, it's mining cryptocurrencies. And it can also steal your Chrome credentials. It's like insane. And anyway, so the good thing about this is there are many good malware tools that can catch this. On my laptop, I have Sophos. Sophos is actually, this is one thing I noticed. It doesn't catch everything, but it definitely got this one. So let me just show you. So it detected my threat, specifically detected my Bitcoin miner. OK, all good. Now, if you guys remember, previously, I had a trust score of 74. So we have set up an integration with Sophos. So what happened was, as soon as I ran my little thing, maybe it wasn't clear. I had only those 4. This new additional detection signal came in. We set up the integration with Sophos. So as soon as it detected it, it told us. Now, we are not an antivirus company. We don't get these. That's not what we do, but that's what Sophos does. So we integrate with this particular tool, and immediately my device trust scores drop to 0. Boom. And because we're a continuous authorization platform, so I'm back at GitLab. Now let me try to access something, right? Like in real time. See, this is why we like the continuous aspect of what we do. This is real time. You don't have to wait for me to re-authenticate. And because it was a live demo, I tested it before. That's why this was showing up previously. I just want to make sure it was still working. But in real time, I blocked access because we detected a drop in the quantifiable trust of an entity in our system. And
is there any alerting with that as well? So that way, when your CEO's laptop suddenly drops to 0 trust.
Real time. So we have 2 concepts. So this is the admin dashboard. The real time talks about unauthorized, forbidden. So the admin gets alerted, but we also make it apparent to the users. We really believe most users are not malicious. I just happen to go to certain websites that happen to mine cryptocurrency. But we let the user know also. It's not like one of these black box things, just some magic happened. So
I have another question. So if I had that happen to a user, and they
go into that website, I can send you the link offline.
So yeah, if that happens, but they, for some reason, they know that what they did wrong, and so they fix it, does it automatically update in the sense, like, could I put a rule in place saying if you fix the solution, you're automatically allowed back in, or if you fix the solution, something else happens, like absolutely. I have to allow you or something?
We have all that flexibility.
Oh, no, okay, that's nice.
Real quick.
Yeah, so I think,
sorry.
Yeah,
No.
Just one point over there is that, that's the whole power thing about, we talked about empowering users to actually fix their own problems. So actually, usually a small screen copy will just go and update your, if you haven't patched your laptop, just go update it, remove this malware or whatever. And they can immediately act on it. And the moment they act on it, we don't need to do anything because it's a trust score engine that just updates automatically.
Another consideration I have is if I have 3 people that all decided to go to the same website at different times, unrelated, and maybe I've solved ticket 1 and then the second one comes. Is there any way that I can then I know that's what happened because it's already fixed in the solution? Can it notify the user how to fix it, or is that something a bit?
So in this world, because I'm using Sophos is excellent at this. So I got an email last night as soon as I did this that, hey, malware detected.
Yeah.
So I would say, as a young company, we have to focus on our areas of expertise.
Yeah,
and we want to integrate with the best in breed who do what they do. And this particular kind of malware, CrowdStrike just went IPO, they're up the street. So though they are very good. There are many good companies that are doing this. We have our signals, but we'll integrate with the best in breed.
I meant more like in the sense of like, do you integrate with the ticketing service that does all of that then? So you guys
We can
don't
add,
have
we're
that?
completely
Okay.
API driven. So
And then, so if that happens, if it were to, would I be able to like easily link them? Because maybe I've got a SOC team of 3 and they all individually received it. I guess that you would expect the ticketing service to do that.
Yeah.
Then.
So Demisto has become very popular in the ecosystem, like these security orchestration toolings. So our API is integrated with Demisto. So once we get into the weeds, our customers have worked with us we've set up several of these SOC integration kind of systems.
Okay, cool.
So do you also have your own alerting system that you could send something via syslog or whatever to alert the enterprise system, like the SIM, and the SIM would raise the alert up to security, and then, hey, the guys would come in and fix the laptop?
Exactly, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So effectively,
Or
you
confiscate
could,
it.
When the device reaches zero trust, it could be isolated from everything,
Can be quarantined like that.
like that.
And many of our customers, they have a lot of these security tools. And device trust is one, but they have tools that alert them on user trust, endpoint not patched. They've never had a way to tie it all together. It's just like, hey, go, you file a ticket, you track that guy down, let's embark on a 3-month project to patch all our laptops. Yeah, sounds fun. But just set the trust call though, the user knows, and the user doesn't get access, they get alerted. We can kind of have a collaborative way to fix security problems.
Sorry. Does the user trust score get updated? Is that
As the machine?
Yeah, our goal is to make it as everything real time.
And on that, if you have any sort of security awareness training or phishing, does that all come in as well? Is that integrated in to the user trust score?
Oh, that would be a good one. Okay. So, have you gone through training could impact your user trust score. Okay.
Actually, I like
Clicking
that
on the
one. That one's
phishing
Yeah,
link,
exactly. Yeah, that's a good idea.
I think your laptop, the Sophos did catch the bad software, right?
It did, yes.
So his trust score still goes down to 0. Is that like a bit harsh, maybe?
But I did it for the demo. The reality is the admin can select, because honestly, Bitcoin mining is not so bad. But what is the other one I had? I found this awesome malware that would essentially crash your. I didn't put it obviously, but if you found that one, you should probably set my trust score to
Because
0.
my first thought now was, what could I do to basically denial of service somebody I want to denial of service? So I sent them like spam emails and stuff like this. They keep clicking on things and I kick them out of their company network. So if it doesn't recover fast, that's how I get their CEO to not be able to work anymore.
That's a good.
If they click on it, they probably don't deserve to be there anyway.
Yeah, but it's a CEO. He probably will still do it.
Just in the interest of time, I'm just going to run through. I think Michael asked for the. So Michael, the SSH works. Oh, sorry, Nate. I think asked for the SSH. So the exact same system works the exact same way, which is, I'm going to not go through all the steps, but the exact same protocol flow before I jump in works. You intercept the client. In this case, I'm going to do SSH, RDP. All the protocols work the same way, but you'll notice instead of issuing a short-lived token, we issue a short-lived certificate. That's the only difference.
So it doesn't matter which client I'm using because it's checking by the protocol at that point.
It's doing it at the TCP level.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are you acting as an SSH proxy in this case?
Yes.
So that you do all, so between your access layer and my SSH server, you have to establish some sort of trust.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a one-time configuration that's required. So in my EC, for example, if I want to get into one of my, so now I'm switching to my cloud servers. If I want to get into one of my, by the way, this was my access tier that just got deployed. I didn't have time to go in there. But say I want to get into my WordPress instance here. So I just copy this IP address, copy that. I come into my terminal, and I SSH in. So the exact same system that I showed, I put it verbose mode. I'm now in. So let me just run top. It's all working. It's all great. So the exact same philosophy, principles are applied. When I come to my dashboard, I see the exact same thing. Now, I was hoping maybe Zoe you would point out that, hey, but your device is at trust score 0. How did it get in?
That's what I was going to say.
Okay. Thank you, Stan. Well, so now I'm going to show you how I'm just going to update the policy. I purposely set a policy that did not take into account trust scoring. So I'm going to update the policy quickly so it actually takes into account trust scoring. And I'm going to do it in JSON because it's just faster. I'm a geek. I can edit JSON faster than I can actually write text. So I'm just going to set that, hey, I have to have the trust level of at least a medium. So I'm going to hit update. And the cool thing, again, continuous enforcement. I'm going to cross my fingers. In real time, now that I'm enforcing trust level via a policy, a session is revoked. So again, I want to show the continuous authorization, not just the simple policy, but this is all distributed in real time. Biggest deployments are thousands and thousands of these nodes. So it's a challenging problem that we have solved.
So on your Sophos one, can the policy be written to be based on what was detected? Not that it just detected a virus, but that it detected this bad worst case scenario.
We have our integration framework, our API framework is very flexible. So absolutely. And we have customers who do this kind of stuff.
Okay.